Welcome to International Finance.
Hi everybody, welcome to our first video lecture in International Finance. We are covering three main topics today. Let me switch to PowerPoint and to our agenda for today. We have the multinational corporation, which is a quick introduction to the MNE, multinational enterprise or multinational corporation. Then we talk about the international monetary system, and we close our lecture with a brief overview, I would say, about the exchange market. Okay, so let's start with a quick press release from Procter & Gamble, which is actually from January 2015, so it's a little bit outdated. However, it makes a good point for why international finance is important. So this is a motivation why we should care about finance, and especially why we should care about finance in an international setting. The press release states that the last quarter of 2014, so October to December 2014, was very challenging for Procter & Gamble. And they say, okay, we did a lot of strategic projects, a lot of improvement. We focused on a dozen core categories, 70 to 80 brands, leading brand growth, acceleration, meaningful product innovation, and so on and so forth. So a lot of good things happened. However, all this effort was not enough to overcome the foreign exchange exposure, which means all this effort was not sufficient to counterbalance the loss due to changes in exchange rate. And why are changes in exchange rates important for Procter & Gamble? Procter & Gamble is based in the US. The headquarters is in the US, but they sell products in Europe, in Germany here, in Russia, in Asia, all over the world. So what happened in the last quarter of 2014 was this year: virtually every currency in the world devalued versus the US dollar, which means the US dollar was very, very strong. So all the profits made in other countries decreased if you translate the profit from whatever currency, euro, Russian ruble, Japanese yen, to US dollars. And this press release, so to speak, is a good example why the management of financial risks, especially in international setting, is very important, and this is why you are attending this class. Okay, so what is a multinational enterprise? Let's go back one step, because we started with a press release from Procter & Gamble, which clearly is a multinational corporation, but we need to define what a multinational corporation or enterprise actually is. And the definition is quite simple. So what do we have here? A multinational enterprise is a corporation that owns or controls production of goods or services in at least one country other than its home country. So we simply need a company that has a domestic market, maybe a German company like Daimler-Benz. The domestic market is Germany. And if this company owns or controls production of goods or services in at least one additional country, let's say Italy or Spain or France or the US, then it's a multinational enterprise. And for Daimler, clearly Daimler is a multinational enterprise. They have production in a lot of countries other than Germany, and therefore for them the definition is clearly true. They are a multinational corporation. So a multinational enterprise has operating branches, subsidiaries, or affiliates located in foreign countries. I would say this is a basic definition which makes sense. You operate in more than one country. Now you might say, okay, but most of the companies actually start domestic. Let's say me and you, we have a great business idea. We found a company. Then I guess our first target market would be Germany, or maybe even more regionally focused. We might say, okay, we target only the city of Esslingen or Stuttgart or whatever. So most companies start domestic. And this is called the domestic phase. We are now here considering the three phases of multinational enterprises. And the domestic phase is the simplest one. The company operates only in its home market. German company only in Germany, Italian company only in Italy, US company only in the United States. And then you begin to trade with different countries. So the international trade phase is the second phase. So maybe you sell your products abroad. Maybe we produce a good here in Germany, but we also sell it in Switzerland, in France, in Austria, maybe in other countries. But we are not actually producing there. We are not controlling production there. We're just selling it. We're just exporting goods to other countries. It might also be that we buy goods from other countries, raw materials. Maybe they are cheaper there. That's why we buy them there. Or we buy services from other countries, and the service team comes to Germany to fulfill its contract. Then we are in the second phase, the international trade phase. And most companies actually at some point in their lifetime enter the international trade phase. And then from international trade to multinational phase, the step is not too big, I would say. You simply say, okay, if we, for example, buy our raw materials in Poland anyway, let's actually produce our goods also in Poland, because then the raw materials don't have to be shipped to Germany, and maybe production there is cheaper. So multinational phase then begins when you establish subsidies or affiliations abroad, if you invest in production, invest in services abroad, and you hire people there, and you have actually you have a building or a subsidy there where those people work. Now, why is it a good or bad idea to do this? So what are the opportunities and risks of becoming domestic? And not domestic, sorry, multinational. And the opportunities actually are summarized quite nice here by the CEO of Infosys. And he said, I define globalization as producing where it is most cost effective, selling where it is most profitable, and sourcing capital where it is cheapest without worrying about any national boundary. So the positive side of becoming a multinational corporation is clearly you can produce and buy your raw materials where they are cheapest. You can sell your products in the markets where the people pay most for your products. So cheap raw materials, high prices for your products means profit goes up. And sourcing capital where it is cheapest, this means you can lend money maybe from banks in Poland for a different interest rates than from banks in Germany, and you would pick the bank whichever gives you the lowest interest rate. So this is clearly the opportunity that you have. You can save money and you can make more money by selling your product. Quite simple, I would say. The risk is actually multi-factored. You have many different risks. So foreign exchange risk. We already heard about this in the press release from Procter & Gamble. Exchange risk basically means the exchange rate between two currencies changes in one or the other direction. And it could change in a way that is bad for you. Okay, and this will be the focus of our class here. We will talk a lot about exchange risk, exchange rates and currencies, but there are other risks which need to be defined at least briefly here. Operational risk, country-specific risk, laws and regulation, and cultural risk. So operational risk simply means everything gets more and more complex if you have production in many different countries with different regulatory systems, maybe different laws, different languages, different culture, different work ethic. So the whole operation gets more complex. And this poses a risk because someone has to oversee everything and to control everything. And if this gets more complex, the risk of making mistakes increases. Country-specific risk could also be political risk, in the sense that you invest in a production plant and then the government comes and says, okay, we are now a communist country, so your production plant belongs to us now. Could be, could be one example for country-specific political risk. Laws and regulation, you have to keep up with the different laws when it comes, laws and regulations when it comes to producing, when it comes to hiring people, when it comes to firing people, maybe minimum wage is a topic. All this legal stuff that's already complicated if you're just operating in Germany. You now have all these laws and regulations in each and every country, and in most of the cases, the laws are different from each other, so you need special people to actually understand and focus on the legal part of your business. And cultural aspects might be work ethic, might be how to behave in the workplace, could lead to trouble and problems if there is no good fit between the culture of two countries when you produce goods for the same company. And I have actually an example for operational and country specific risk, and it comes from the car industry. So here you can see different examples from different car brands like Chevrolet, like Honda, Mitsubishi, Mazda, and Tata. And becoming multinational also means, when it comes to branding your car, you need to think of a name that is actually a good word, a good name in each and every language. And here are some examples where this went wrong and where they made actually mistakes. Let's just pick out one or two. So Mazda La Puta, I guess if you speak Spanish, you know that La Puta is not the nicest word to call a woman. And Mazda called this car, this boxy hatchback, La Puta, and it didn't sell well in Spanish-speaking countries, which makes sense if you call your car La Puta. Or Honda Fitta almost was the biggest, the biggest mistake in naming a car. They changed it actually just before it went on sale to Honda Jazz, I think was the name. They changed it to, yes, Honda Jazz, because they realized Fitta in Scandinavia is a really bad cuss word. I'm not going to say what it means, but it's really not nice to call a woman Fitta. The German word is actually, it starts with the same letter. Plus, they had a slogan for this car, and the slogan was, because it's a small car, but they wanted to say, even if it's small, we have a lot of space in the car. So they said Honda Fitta, small on the outside, big on the inside. And if you know what Fitta means, this would have been horribly wrong and a horrible marketing campaign. So they changed it just before. They already printed all the materials, but they noticed just before they started to launch the campaign, and they renamed it to Honda Jazz. Okay, so just a couple of examples here. What could go wrong if you become multinational, except the financial aspect? But from now on, we will focus on the financial aspect. Here you have a quick summary about the focus of our class. You can think of a multinational corporation like this. You have the corporation here in the middle, and every corporation has a domestic product and a domestic capital market. So the domestic product market for a German company would be Germany, and the company would sell their products in Germany and buy raw materials in Germany. And the domestic capital market would be the German capital market. You might borrow money from Deutsche Bank, from Sparkasse Volksbank, and you would also invest in the domestic capital market. You might invest in German companies. You buy shares of German companies, stocks, whatever you like. That's not our focus. the MNE has, in addition to the domestic product and capital market, the foreign product and capital market, as you can see here and here, which means the MNE also sells products to foreign countries and buys raw materials in foreign markets, plus raises capital, maybe borrow money in foreign capital markets and invest capital in foreign capital markets. And in between there is a layer, because if your headquarter is, let's say, located in Germany and you do business with countries outside of Europe, you have the foreign exchange market in the middle, because you need to exchange euros to whatever currency is used in the foreign product and foreign capital market. It might be US dollars, Russian ruble, Japanese yen, whatever. And that's the idea of the multinational corporation, and this is the focus of our lecture, and we will talk about the foreign exchange market in detail. But before we do this, let's start with the international monetary system. This is a little bit of a history class now, because we actually start with the early history of currencies. So already really early civilizations developed money as a way to exchange goods, which actually makes sense if you think about it. Without money, you can't just trade goods against each other. Let's say you are a farmer and you have some pigs, but you need some bread for breakfast. Let's say you go to the bakery and you have to trade, I don't know, 1 pig against 5 or 10 loaves of bread. That would be the only way of exchanging goods. You exchange 1 cow for new boots or whatever. With money, it gets easier, because you have a currency and you know, okay, 1 pig is 5 coins and 1 loaf of bread is 1 coin. So I could exchange 5 loaves of bread for a pig, but it would be easier to just exchange the coins, and that's it, because coins are easier to transport. You don't have to carry a pig around. Plus, coins are easier to store. Whether you want to buy the bread now or in, I don't know, 6 months, makes no difference. If you have a pig in 6 months, you might not have a pig anymore. So, okay, using money to exchange goods, I guess you already know that makes sense. The problem was, in earlier times, there was no standardization. So people just used different stuff as coins, mostly precious metals like gold, silver, and so on. And the value of the coin was also not standardized. It was based on the weight. So, and people, you know, is this 5 or 10 euros? Let's see. Okay, this is a little bit heavier. Okay, I say these are 10 euros, these are 5. That would be the style of exchanging. So no standardization. Some standardization, no, maybe it's not correct. Some standardization was going on, but only in specific local areas. There was no trade between broader regional areas, because a wide variety of coins were used, and it was not always clear, okay, what is the exchange rate from this coin to this coin, and so on and so forth. So early history of coins. And actually, also really early, 1,000 years ago in China, people started to use money with no intrinsic value. What does that mean? A gold coin has some intrinsic value because gold is valuable. Paper money has no intrinsic value. If you take a, I don't know, 100 euro bill, and there wouldn't be any central bank and no one would assign a value to this bill, then it would just be a piece of paper, and that's it, with no value. If you would have a gold coin and people would say we are not paying with gold anymore, you still would have a gold coin which might have some value to you, because you could, I don't know, put it on a chain or earrings. You could do something with that. The paper money is worthless if it loses its extrinsic value. So how did it start with the paper money? Carrying around the gold was actually also, I mean, it was better than carrying around animals and all the goods, but it still was very heavy. So people started to bring the money to the bank, the gold coins, and the bank wrote them a note that said, okay, you have 500 coins of gold stored in our bank. And now you could use this note to buy stuff. You could say, okay, look, I have 500 coins. Can I buy your farm for 500 coins? I just give you the note and you can go to the bank with this note and get the coins. That's why also the term banknotes, Banknoten, was established and actually is still there today. We still call banknotes Banknoten also in German, and it actually comes from that time where you just had a note that says, okay, Philipp Schreiber has 10 coins of gold, and someone from the bank signed it, stamped it, and I could use this to buy goods or services. Yeah, but the thing is, to gain acceptance, paper money had still to be backed up by gold. So even 100 years ago, I think, you still had the possibility to go to the central bank and say, okay, I have, let's say, the currency back then, I have 500 Reichsmark or whatever. I want to exchange this for gold. This was possible. So every new bill of whatever currency, let's use euro as an example, every new 100 euro bill could only be printed if you had additional 100 euro worth of gold in the central bank stored. Fort Knox, for example, was used for this in the US. They still have a lot of gold, but it's not in the sense that they actually back each and every dollar bill with the gold value. But at that time, that was the case, and that's why central banks needed a lot of gold. And this was called the gold standard. So the gold standard was established in the second half of the 19th century. And so, for example, Germany issued the Reichsmark, and they said, okay, 79.1 Reichsmark can be exchanged against 1 ounce of gold. And you could do this. You could go to the central bank and say, okay, I have 160 Reichsmark. I want 2 ounces of gold, please. And you could give the government the money and you would get the gold. Also, the United States did this in 1879, and they said, okay, 1 ounce of gold is $20.67. If two countries had the gold standard, you actually already knew the exchange rate, because what you know is, okay, I can buy 1 ounce of gold for 79.1 Reichsmark, and I can buy 1 ounce of gold for $20.67 US dollars. So the exchange rate between Reichsmark and US dollars has to be 79.1 divided by 20.67. So for 3.83 Reichsmark, you would get 1 US dollar. Why? Because you could simply say, okay, I take 79.10 Reichsmark, I get 1 ounce of gold, I travel to the US, I give the 1 ounce of gold to the central bank, and I get 20.67 US dollars. So you basically exchange 79.1 Reichsmark to 20.67 US dollars, or 3.83 Reichsmark per US dollar. What would happen if the real exchange rate would differ from that? So let's say there is, at that time there was no internet and nothing, and you come to the US and you discover, oh, okay, I thought 3.83 Reichsmark per US dollar is the real exchange rate, but now that I'm here in the US, I discover that I get 5 Reichsmark per US dollar. So what could you do if you want to profit from this mispricing? You do the following. Okay, you say, I buy 10 ounces of gold in Germany. 10 ounces of gold is 1 ounce 79.1, so 10 ounces is 791 Reichsmark. Now you go to the US, and let's assume there are no frictions. You can just travel there, or you travel there anyway, so there are no additional costs, no additional travel costs, which is a strong assumption, but let's assume. Okay, then you go to the US and you exchange the 10 ounces of gold to US dollars. And since 1 ounce is 20.67, you get 206.7 US dollars. And now you go to the exchange market for money, where you just discovered that the exchange rate is 5 Reichsmark per US dollar. So you take your 206.7 US dollars and give the money to the exchange, and you get 1033.5 Reichsmark. So let's recap. You started with 791 Reichsmark, and now you have 1033.5. So your profit is 242.5 Reichsmark. And you could do this over and over again. So this would be an arbitrage strategy if the real exchange rate would diverge from the gold standard exchange rate, in theory. In reality, the problem is there is costs to this strategy, like transportation, insurance. You don't want to get robbed with your gold traveling from Germany to the US, but still it could be a profitable strategy. And this strategy would lead to the fact that in the long run, the exchange rate would go back to 3.83, because a lot of people would try to do this, and then the demand for US dollars would go up, the price for US dollars would go up, and therefore the exchange rate would go down to 3.83. Okay. You can actually try to solve this at home. I mean, you are at home watching this video. You can try to solve it after this video, or you hit pause. So if transportation would cost 5 Reichsmark per ounce, so here we wouldn't have 0, but here we would have, in this case, minus 50. What would be the upper and lower limit for the exchange rate for which it still would not be profitable to actually engage in this arbitrage strategy? So you can think about it, and in the live session we can actually discuss the solution. Okay, the gold standard ended, and one of the main reasons is the big disadvantage of the gold standard is it limits economic growth. Why is that the case? So let's say an economy growth and growth and growth, more companies, more profit, more people. All those people earn money and they need paper money. But the government can only print paper money if they find more gold, because they have to back up each and every dollar or euro bill with more gold. And at some point, this might become a problem, and the economic growth is slowed down or limited completely if you stick to the gold standard. On the other hand, the advantage of the gold standard is there is almost no inflation in currencies, because if you fix your currency with gold and the gold price is stable, then also your currency is stable. But the disadvantage is a little bit bigger, because it leads to the Triffin dilemma. Either economic growth is hampered, so either the economy cannot grow anymore because there is no more gold for the government to print additional money, or the currency loses trust because people stop actually trusting the government if they don't back up the money with gold. But the First World War effectively ended the gold standard. States needed a lot of money to finance the war, so they just printed it and they said, okay, let's stop the gold standard because we just need to finance this war. And also there was no international trade going on. You couldn't trade, you couldn't buy more gold if you wanted to print, because the world was at war, and therefore most countries abandoned the gold standard in the 1920s. And now what can you do if you don't stick to the gold standard, but you still want to somehow fix your currency, and you still want to fix the exchange rate to other currencies? There are exchange rate arrangements. So the history class is over now. This here is up-to-date stuff. These are exchange rate arrangement possibilities for countries today. So what can you do? You can fix your exchange rate, or you can have a free floating exchange rate. So the big difference is a fixed exchange rate is fixed to something. So let's say the euro would be fixed to the US dollar, then there would be a fixed exchange rate between euros and US dollars, and the euro could only change in value if the US dollar would change. Euro and US dollars are not fixed. They float against each other freely, supply and demand, and this is the other opportunity, free floating exchange rates where only supply and demand drives the value of a currency. We can actually dig a little bit deeper here and look at options for fixed and floating currencies. So there is a level of fixation. You can have a hard peg, or you could also call it hard fix, and a soft peg or soft peg. So the hard peg is really extreme, where you would say, okay, some countries do this. Let's say you're a state in Africa and you say, okay, the exchange rate from our currency to US dollars is 3 of our currency is 1 US dollars. And we just fix that. And if the dollar gets more and more valuable, also your currency gets more valuable. If the dollar goes down, your currency goes down. You just fix it. But the state says, if you want to exchange our money to US dollars, the exchange rate is 3. You cannot do anything about that. That's a hard peg. Soft peg is, you would say, the exchange rate is between 2 and 4, and it should be within this band. But within this band, it can move more or less freely. Floating, managed float is you have a government intervention. So let's say some currency devaluates strongly, then the government might step in and say, okay, we have some intervention strategies and we try to actually suppress these devaluating tendencies, and therefore we are going to buy more of our own currency back, so to stabilize it. Or free floating, you just say, okay, just a free float, market decides the value, supply and demand is the only thing that matters, and no or little government intervention within the exchange rate. So this is more or less what we just talked about, the classification by the International Monetary Fund, IMF. You can go through them, and the interesting thing here is, how does the exchange rate risk change based on the exchange rate arrangement? So if you have free floating exchange rates, you have continuous market-driven fluctuation. So more or less every day, the exchange rate changes a little bit. I used to work in Switzerland before I joined the University of Esslingen, and actually I lived during the week in Switzerland and on the weekend in Germany, but I rented an apartment here in Germany. So my rent was in euro, and also more or less my cost of living, my car insurance and all this stuff was in euro, but my income was in Swiss francs, because I worked in Switzerland and I got my salary to a Swiss bank account. So I had to exchange the money every month from Swiss francs to euros, and this is a free floating arrangement, and some month I made more money because the exchange rate was, I would get 1.1 euro per Swiss franc, and in some other month I only get 1.5 or 1.05 euros per Swiss franc, and you had little changes, but continuously little changes. And the other extreme would be a fixed exchange rate, where the exchange rate is just fixed and cannot change. And if that would be the case, I would get the exact same exchange rate every month working in Switzerland, let's say 1.1 euros per Swiss franc for the whole 2 years I've been working there, without any exchange rate risk. The problem is, sometimes you have to adjust it if the market pressure gets too high. So you have rare adjustments, but if you adjust a fixed exchange rate, you have a large fluctuation. You have a huge jump, and it could be that yesterday the price is 1.1 euros per Swiss franc, and now the adjustment comes and now it's 1.5 or something like this. So the risk here is continuous but small, and here very rare but large changes. And everything in the middle is a mix between those. Let me quickly show you here on Chrome, because 2015 actually the Swiss National Bank removed a ceiling in the exchange rate between Swiss francs and euro. So before 2015, the Swiss National Bank said, okay, the maximum exchange rate is X, and we have here a ceiling. It cannot go over this point. It was more or less a soft peg. They said the Swiss franc euro exchange rate only can move within a certain band, but it cannot get higher than a certain level. But then at some point, the market pressure went too high and they removed it. And I can show you what happened here if we look at this chart. So you can see here in 2015, or let's just remove these dates completely. Is that possible? Yeah, like this. You can see actually in 2015 there was a huge jump from about 0.8 to exchange rate of 1 from Swiss franc to euro, which led to a huge devaluation and a huge shock for a lot of companies that were operating in both countries, in Switzerland and in Germany. And that's exactly what it means here: rare but large adjustments of parity fluctuations, in case you have fixed exchange rate. All right, if you're interested, this is how the map of currency arrangements looks like. Free floating regime means you have only supply and demand. You can see here the countries in the light green, or the light green color. The green color is managed float. Then you have currency pegs, so soft pegs or hard pegs. And in some countries, you actually just use a different currency. You don't have your own currency. You just use US dollars, for example. That's the red countries. And you can see here in Europe, almost all, clearly, since we have the same currency, almost all countries have a managed float, because the euro exchange rate is somehow managed by the ECB, the European Central Bank. Okay, with that, we are closing the international monetary system just as a quick start, how exchange rates evolved, how the monetary system evolved, and now we take a look at the exchange market. So the exchange market is the market where you exchange money, where you exchange currency A against currency B. If you want to express this more difficult, you could also say that it's the transfer of purchasing power between countries. That's just an elaborate way of saying transferring money from one country to another and exchanging it from one currency to another. Why is this market important? And we are going to see that it is very important. The market is important because it enables trade between countries. Globalization has improved a lot of our lives and has improved the welfare all over the world. And this was just possible because different firms from different countries are now able to trade with each other by exchanging money and by exchanging goods. The market is also used to manage exchange rate risk, so to minimize exposure to the risk of exchange rate changes. And we're going to see in the later sessions, and especially in the exercise sessions, how you could do that, how you could minimize or manage exchange rate risk. The market has evolved dramatically over time. The market is now based on supply and demand. It's a global 24-hour trading process, so you can exchange money at every point in time of the day, because if the exchange in Frankfurt is closed, the one in Tokyo is open. If Tokyo closes, the one in New York opens. If New York closes, and so on and so forth. So you would be able to trade exchange rates 24 hours, 7 days a week. Or maybe not 7 days a week. I'm not sure about the Sundays, but at least on a business day, 24 hours per day. Who trades? Who are participants of this FX trading? So you have different types of individuals or firms participating in exchange trading, but we could actually group it to 5 categories of institutional participants that operate in the market. So clearly you have banks, or banks and non-bank foreign exchange dealers. These are they work as dealers, so they actually carry out the trades for you. So I guess you also know the non-bank exchange dealers. When you visit a country with a foreign currency at the airport, you have a lot of small firms where you can exchange your money, and you should never do this because the exchange rates at the airport are really, really bad in most of the cases. Then you have private individuals and firms that conduct commercial or investment transactions. So private individuals conducting commercial transactions simply would be, I order a new iPhone from the US and I pay it in US dollars. It would be a commercial transaction from my side as a private individual. Or you could have firms like Daimler-Benz, and they invest in a new production plant in China, and this would be an investment transaction. Or let's say Tesla, they built the new factory here in Berlin, and actually the workers are paid in euro. I guess the companies who built the factory are paid in euro. So Tesla is a US company. They had to exchange some money in euros. You have speculators and arbitrageurs. Speculators who actually only trade to make a profit, or people who see there are differences between currency exchanges, and I can profit from them, and I can make an arbitrage profit. We will learn about that later. But speculation is one part of the FX market. Central banks and treasuries, clearly you have central banks. If the ECB wants to strengthen the euro, it might be that they exchange, they buy euro and they sell US dollars. And to buy euros and sell US dollars, you have to be part of the FX market. And foreign exchange brokers who actually help to facilitate bringing together supply and demand. Okay, these are the 5 trading parties, or the categories of trading parties, we could say. And we will focus in this class mainly on commercial companies conducting investment transactions, plus sometimes on the speculators, because we look at traders that trade to make money, and we look at companies that use the foreign exchange market to manage exchange rate risk. So risk management. This is our focus. We are not so much focusing on the banks, on the brokers, and on the private individual. All right. Now there is some new vocabulary we would need to understand how exchange trading works. And one important thing is the so-called spot rate. The spot rate is the exchange rate at a specific point in time, and that point in time is now, today. So the spot rate euro to US dollars is now 1.18 to 1, as you can see here on Bloomberg. Here I just googled euro US dollar spot rate, and that's the exchange rate now at that moment. If you're going to exchange 1 euro, now you get 1.18 to 1 US dollars. That's the idea of the spot rate. And the denomination of the spot rate is because we need to understand you have two options. You always have two options. Euro dollar spot rate could be how many euros do I get for $1, or how many dollars do I get for €1? And we need some clear way to understand what are we talking about. And the way to do is you have the currencies here in the exponent of the S. So the S stands for spot rate, X stands for currency 1, and Y stands for currency 2. And SXY stands for how many units of X have to be paid for 1 unit of currency Y, or how many units of X do I get for 1 unit of currency Y. So let's make a real life example. The spot rate $euro means how many dollars do I get for €1, or how many dollars do I have to pay to get €1. It's exactly the same. And the result here would be for 1.1476 US dollars, you get €1. Yeah. And you can characterize it in two ways. You can say you can buy dollars against euros, or you can say you sell euros against dollars, because every transaction is always a buy transaction and a sell transaction, because you have two parties. So if you let's say you have $10 and I give you 10 euros for that, then you could say you sold me 10 US dollars, or I could say I bought 10 US dollars. Every sell is also a buy transaction. That's why we can characterize it here in these two ways. But it's important just to understand the nomination. SXY means how many units of X do I get for 1 unit of Y. Now, another thing we need to learn is the bid-ask spread, because let's say I have US dollars and I say, okay, I want to exchange it for euros, and the minimum exchange rate I want to have is 1.1. And someone else says, okay, I'm willing to exchange euros to US dollars, and I'm selling it for 1.15. So you have a bid rate and an ask rate. The bid rate is what a bank or dealer is willing to pay to purchase a foreign currency, and the ask rate is the offer rate. So at what price are they going to sell it? And normally the difference is always in favor of the bank. I mean, you know that if you look at Kreissparkasse Esslingen-Nürtingen, I checked it in 2019. So sorry for that. I could have updated that, but the point is clear. So the bid rate is 1.14 and the ask rate is 1.1461. So the difference is 0.06 euro per US dollar. So what does it mean? Bid rate is what a bank is paying us to purchase a foreign currency. So they're paying us €1 for 1.14. No, here, this way around. They're paying us, okay, let me start over. So ask is at what price a bank is willing to sell. So we have to pay 1.1461 US dollars to buy €1. But if we are going to sell €1 to the bank, they only give us 1.1401. So if we would buy and sell all the time, we would lose money all the time. And you can see the difference is actually even larger for private clients than for firms. So if you exchange money because you go to the US or any other country on vacation, make sure to compare the rates a little bit. And most of the time, it's not very wise to go to Kreissparkasse and exchange it there, it's always better to take your bank card with you, go to an ATM and just withdraw the money directly. And if the ATM asks if you want to have the pre-registered exchange rate, you always have to say no, just give me the bank rate. And I guess this is the best way of doing it. Okay. Yeah, bid and ask rate differ, and then you have something called the mid rate, and the mid rate is simply the average between bid and ask. All right. So here we have some simple exchange rate calculations, and we're going to go through them step by step, just to get, a first impression of what will be relevant for later lectures and for later exercise sheets. Okay, the first thing we need to understand that the exchange rate is a relative price between two currencies. So you can actually express the price either in as we said, 1 unit of X equals some units of Y, or 1 unit of Y equals some units of X. So in the case of this example here, the exchange rate XY is 2, which means the exchange rate YX is 0.5. If you get 2 euros for $1, then you get if you get 2 euros for $1, you get $0.5 for 1 euro. That would be the equivalent. And in general, we have a conversion rate. So if you want to switch the denomination from X to Y to Y to X, you just calculate it by 1 divided by Y to X. Let's look at an example here, real life. I just checked the exchange rate between US dollars and euro today. So today, we have 1 euro is 1.18 US dollar. So we have the exchange rate from dollar to euro is 1.18. For 1 euro, you get 1.18 US dollar. And now we want to flip that expression, or let's just confirm it. Euro, US dollar, 1.18 according to Google. All right. So if we take a look at our equation here, if we want the exchange rate for euro to dollar, we have to take the dollar to euro exchange rate, and we have 1 divided by that. So if we go back here to our notepad, we can say it follows that the exchange rate, the spot rate, euro dollar, is 1 divided by rate dollar euro, which is 1 divided by 1.18, and that's 0.85. So for 1 US dollar, you would get 0.85 euro. And we can check it. US dollar euro rate, 0.85. That's exactly what we calculate. All right, so this is one thing that makes sense, that you can express it in 2 ways. The other thing is called cross rates. So the idea is, if you know 2 different exchange rates, so US dollar to euro and US dollar to Japanese yen, or euro to British pound and euro to Swiss franc, then you also know the third exchange rate. In my example, euro, British pound, euro, Swiss franc. You also know British pound to Swiss franc. And how this works, I think, is easiest to understand if we do a cross rate example here. So it looks like this. Let's assume we have British pounds, euros, and US dollar. Let's say we know 1 British pound, 1 GBP, would be 1.3520 US dollars. And let's say we would also know that 1 US dollar is 0.8315 euros. Okay, we know the exchange rate from pound to dollar and from dollar to euro, and we're interested in the exchange rate from pound to euro, so the cross rate. And cross rate in the sense here we have the diagonal relation between British pound and euro. So what we want to have is we want to have both equations in the sense that we know the value of 1 US dollar. Here we already know it. 1 US dollar is 0.8315. Here we have to do an intermediate step. If 1 pound is $1.352, then it follows that $1 is 1 divided by 1.3520 GBP. And the nice thing is now we have 1 US dollar here, we have 1 US dollar here, and we can actually set these two parts here equal to each other because both are here we have the value of $1 and here we have the value of $1. So from that it follows 0.8315 euros are 1 divided by 1.3520 GBP. And with that we can easily find the value of 1 British pound in euros by multiplying both sides by 1.3520, because then we get 1 GBP is 0.8315 multiplied by 1.352, and that's euro. And if you multiply it out, you get 1.1242 euro. So that's the cross rate. We calculated the exchange rate pounds to euro based on the exchange rate pounds to dollar and dollar to euro. And that's how it works. That's the idea of cross rates. And you can use a cross rate table like Bloomberg here. They actually show all the cross rates that they are derived from exchange rates with a third currency. Okay, now this here is the example we just discussed, but now let's think about arbitrage. Let's say we have a cross rate, and then we go to our bank and we say, hey, I just calculated the cross rate, and the cross rate should be 1.1242 euros per pound. And the bank says to us, okay, that's strange, because here you can exchange 1.1 euros per pound. So we have a difference between them. And since we are smart, we would say, okay, how can we actually make money with this price difference? What would be our strategy? Now let's think about our strategy real quick. And let's actually solve that. So arbitrage strategy. Our idea would be, okay, how can we make money if 1 British pound would only be 1.1 euro and not 1.1242 euro? our first step would be, because we would realize, okay, with our bank, to buy British pound is actually cheaper than if we would use the cross rate, because one British pound would cost 1.1242, and with our bank it only costs 1.1. It's cheaper, and if something is cheap, we want to buy it. So let's exchange money from euro to British pound, and to make it easy for us to calculate, because the exchange rate is 1.1, let's just assume we exchange 11,000 euros to 10,000 British pound. Okay, because the exchange rate is 1.1, 10,000 British pounds equal 11,000 euros. That makes sense. Okay, now we have British pounds. Step 2 is we exchange the British pounds, 10,000 GBP, to US dollars, because the US dollar exchange rate is known, and it actually is set here. We would get 1.3520 US dollar per British pound. So if we multiply that by 10,000, we get 13,520. 13,520 US dollar. All right, and now I guess you know what our last step is. We take our 13,520 US dollars and we exchange it to euros, with the exchange rate being 0.8315, the one we are given here in the middle of this example here. We can see the exchange rate from US dollar to euro, 0.8315. So we get 0.8315 times 13,520. And if you multiply that, you get 11,241.88 euros. So we started with 11,000 euros here, and we end up with 11,241.88. So 241.88 euros is our profit, which is actually okay, but we can actually repeat it. We now take the 11,241, we again buy British pound, we exchange it to US dollars and exchange it back to euro, and our wealth grows and grows and grows. So actually we wouldn't stop there, we would do it more and more times. And that's what's called arbitrage. You use price differences between different markets or different currencies to make a profit. And how this would work out here is what we just calculated. Okay, I have a real-life example as well. Quoted rates: Citibank, Barclays, and Dresdner Bank, Dresdner Bank before they got bought, where you can see some rates. You can do a cross-rate calculation based on Citibank and Barclays, and you can actually see, okay, it's only 0.001 less than Dresdner Bank. So here we assumed a strong difference. Instead of 1.1242, we said it's just 1.1. So the difference was 0.0142, a big difference. Here the difference is very small. The difference between the cross rate out of those two here and the quoted bank by Dresdner is only 0.001. You can see only the last number here is different. But still, this would be sufficient to make some arbitrage profit. And you could do it like this here. As an example, if you would be a trader that starts with 1 million, you need more money to actually make it profitable, but you start with 1 million US dollars, and then you do more or less the same steps we just did. So you take the 1 million US dollars and you exchange them to British pounds based on Barclays quote. So you would get 641,643 British pounds. Then you exchange the British pound to euros based on Dresdner Bank's quote. You get 752,133 euros. And then you go to Citibank and exchange the euros back to US dollars, and you would receive 1,112, and you would have made a profit of 112 euros per trade. And you could go circles here and do it and do it and do it, and the profit would grow and grow. So the steps are exactly the same as the steps I just outlined on the notepad. That's why we are not looking at this in too much detail, but this would be how it works, even if you just have a small difference in quotes. All right, so how does the spot rate change over time? So here you have the US dollar euro spot rate since the introduction of the euro from 1999 to 2019. So I just didn't update the slide here for the last year, but the point I want to make is pretty clear, even if we don't have the last year. The spot rate fluctuates. It doesn't fluctuate very heavily. I mean, in 20 years, it has always been between 0.8 and 1.5. If you compare it to other currencies, there you have much more fluctuation, but you have, I would say, a significant fluctuation. It really matters if you visit New York and you would get $1.5 per euro, or you only get $0.8 per euro, and you stay there for 1 or 2 weeks. Your vacation might be twice as expensive if you only get 0.8 compared to 1.5 or 1.6. The question is, how do you calculate changes of exchange rates? Because this is a little bit difficult. So let's say you have Mexican Mexican dollar to US dollar. And let's say the Mexican dollar is, you get 10 Mexican dollars per US dollar, and now it changes to 11 per US dollar. And the question is, by how much did it change? One idea would be to say 10%, because before you get 10 per dollar, now you get 11. So it changed by 10%. But that's not how it is defined. You could also say it changed, the difference from 11 to 10 is 10 divided by 11 minus 1. It decreased by 9.09%. And we just need a clear standard so that each and every company that calculates exchange rate changes gets the same result. And that's how we do it. There is a definition, foreign currency terms, home currency terms. It always comes to the same solution. So what you do is, in foreign currency terms, if you have the term, how many Mexican dollars do you get for 1 US dollar? So the foreign currency now is the Mexican dollar, and you start with the Mexican dollar. You get 10 per 1 US dollar. Then the change is calculated as beginning rate, which would be 10 for 1, minus ending rate, which would be 11 for 1, divided by ending rate. So 10 minus 11 is minus 1, divided by 11 is minus 0.9, is minus 9.09%. And if you want to start with the US dollar, the home currency, and in this example, the US dollar is our home currency, you would say, okay, what is the rate now? The ending rate. You start with the ending rate, and the ending rate would be, you would get 0.09091 US dollars for 1 Mexican dollar. Before, you got 0.1 US dollar per Mexican dollar, because the rate was 1 to 10. And you divide by the beginning rate. And you also find minus 9.09%. So you see, you come to the same result. It just is, that's some complicated stuff. You have to either take a cheat sheet and write it down, or learn it by heart. Depending, is the foreign currency the starting currency, or the home currency the starting currency? The formula is beginning minus ending divided by ending, or ending minus beginning divided by beginning. But if you use those formulas, you make sure that you always get the same result, and not that, you know, the euro dollar value changes and some guy in Germany calculates the change and some girl in the US, and they find different results. It has to be they find the same result in the percentage change. That's why we have to standardize it like we do here. Okay, and here you can see the daily changes in the last quarter of 2018 between the dollar-euro spot rate. So the fluctuation is between -1 and +1% per day. So actually not that insignificant. There's a significant change in the spot rate, and this also demonstrates again that risk management is important, because in most of the cases we measure risk in fluctuations. If something fluctuates more, it's more risky. And even the dollar-euro spot rate, which is more or less well managed and to a well-established currencies, you have quite some daily fluctuation here. Okay, so far that's it for our first video lecture. We are perfectly in time. You have actually 20 minutes more to study it or to go back to the video. We discussed this stuff in our live session. We will solve the first exercise sheet, which covers these topics. And if you want to read up, you can take a look at chapters 1, 2, and 5 in our textbook. Okay, that's it. Thanks for your attention, and see you in the live session.